Hi everybody, my name is Damien Jellens and I am the founder of Legend Life Global and also the host of the Stress and Burnout Summit. So today I wanted to share a little bit about my own personal story and journey with regards to stress. So specifically I want to talk about how I became wired for stress and what I've learned about rewiring my mind so stress is no longer my default. So for most of my life, I thought I was just driven, that feeling stress most of the time was normal, that being relentless was strength, that pushing harder, working longer, never slowing down was what was required to succeed. But underneath that drive was something I didn't understand for many decades. In fact, it's not until more recently that it's become clear to me. I wasn't chasing success. I wasn't trying to escape suffering. I was running from the fear of failure, from the fear of rejection, from the gnawing feeling that I wasn't enough. All a product of early childhood experiences, needs not met, and faulty meaning being given to what I was experiencing. Like so many others who struggle later in life, my childhood was far from ideal and certainly set the stage for being wired for stress. By the time I was 11, I had already developed a profound belief that I was not enough and that I didn't fit in both at school and even in my own family. I survived a car crash at age 5 where I was the only one injured, faced bullying for not speaking English when starting school, and for being overweight, a difficult relationship with a harsh disciplinary father, and other events that left me feeling far from safe and secure, culminating at age 11 in witnessing my mother being run over by a car. This event was especially difficult with me blaming myself, and worse, feeling that I was blamed by my father, my sister, and others in a family, as if a child could control fate. It became a guilt that never left and something that became the background hum of my life. Home wasn't safe either. My father, who was ex Special Forces, who grew up in occupied Holland during World War II, someone himself who was obviously wired for strength, was a gruff and angry man who dished out discipline with a very strong hand. He didn't tolerate weaknesses and believed in toughening me up. Man up, don't cry, be stronger were the common terms of endearment I heard, inclusive of I could kill you with my little finger when trying to defend myself. Unresolved emotions surfaced into tantrums and unexplained anger, which were met by my father with further hidings and beatings. Fights with my mother, beatings from my father, fear and shame became my default. And little did I know it were being wired into my nervous system. By my teens, I'd learned to live in a constant state of fight and flight. The constant battles with my father at home soon escalated as I fought to defend myself from my father's definition of disciplining. Soon, social welfare, counsellors, and the police became involved, with myself being identified as a problem, not my father. The net result being I was labelled an antisocial and aggressive child, and eventually sentenced by a court order to spend a considerable amount of time in a boys' home, where obviously my nervous system became further wired for fight or flight. It wasn't that I was bad or wanted to be angry, it was just my default reaction. My body was stuck in survival mode. From then on, I lived through that lens, never safe, never enough, always proving that I was worth loving. That mistakes meant rejection, that if I didn't do everything right, I'd be abandoned. So I learned to protect myself by overperforming, by controlling, striving, and doing. That wiring ran deep and became my operating system. It drove me to overtrain in sport, to overachieve in school, to overwork and work in business, to hide behind achievement, or to avoid what I was feeling by being constantly busy. The problem, though, was every success came with a crash. I'd build something, then find a way to inadvertently sabotage it. When things or people got too close or too good, I'd pull away. When life got quiet, I'd make it chaotic again. A new project, a new company, new country, new crisis, or new beginning. When it all fell apart, I'd start again, fueled by shame and blame for failing instead of purpose, and committed to working even harder to succeed this time round. So that became my rhythm: succeed, sabotage, survive, repeat. I was restless, disconnected, and alone, surrounded by people, but never really with anyone. And each time I told myself I was just ambitious, that I was just driven, that all I needed was to just work harder. But really, I was addicted to stress because calm felt foreign and uncomfortable. It felt unsafe and threatening. As it happens, you can only keep up this pace of living for a time before you're held to account. In my case, it was my body, with a transient ischemic attack, better known as a transient stroke that saw me collapse in my office one day, which was then closely followed by a weekend of memory loss, subsequently diagnosed as stress-induced amnesia. My system had been in threat mode for decades, and it finally decided to put me on notice that this was not sustainable by shutting down. But the real turning point for me wasn't just these health scares. It was and continues to be my son, who has been living with me for the last 6 years. I've slowly seen him change in ways I didn't want to see. He wasn't angry or ill-tempered like I had been as a child, but was becoming quieter, more withdrawn, more anxious, more sullen than when he was younger, and relying on social media to distract himself. Slowly it became clear that he was beginning to mirror my wiring, my reactivity, my distraction, my distance, absorbing my negative energy, learning to numb himself just like I was, but just in a different way. The uncomfortable realization then took hold that I was the problem, and that if I didn't change, he would inherit all my wiring, and that I would be setting him up to struggle through life, always surviving but never thriving as I had been. That was the moment I decided that I needed to change. So I began to study neuroscience, psychology, emotional and nervous system regulation. I also started interviewing wellness experts, healers, and therapists. And slowly I started to see that the patterns I'd personally developed very clearly. To understand that whilst I was struggling, I was not broken. I was just wired for stress and shaped by meanings I had attached to what I had suffered long ago in childhood, and which now shaped how I saw and reacted to everything. That my life was being run by faulty circuits or programming, and would continue to do so unless I took action and learned to rewire them. Not by grinding harder or being tougher, but by becoming conscious, mindful, and intentional. By learning to regulate, to respond, and to live with awareness instead of reaction. And so began the long process of rewiring myself, a journey I'm still on and committed to continue. It is this understanding that now drives me to help others see what I was forced to learn the hard way, to help them see that they too can change the way they are now showing up in life, that they too can rewire their stress circuits, change their programming, break free from the patterns that keep them stuck in overdrive, and return to who it is they are meant to be, their true, authentic self. It is for this reason I formed Legend Life Global to host wellness and mental health summits like the Happy Mind Summit and now the second edition of the Stress and Burnout Summit, to help educate people about what limits them, to help them see that they may be wired for stress, to realize they're not broken, that they're just reacting to life through old wiring that can be changed. That no matter what happened to them in the past, they can change how it lives in them today. If any of this resonates with you and you too are ready to respond to life rather than react, to break free from old programming, old stress circuits, I invite you to join me and 40 experts starting November 17th for the second edition of the Stress and Burnout Summit. Let's learn together how to master stress, not just manage it, to rewire the patterns that hold us back and rediscover calm, clarity, and real strength to live as who we're always meant to be. Because if I can rewire, anyone can. And because the real measure of success isn't how much you can endure it, it's how deeply you can live. So I hope to see you in the Stress and Burnout Summit. Let's rewire together.